about halfway through now. So before I continue reading, I did want to stop and talk about a few things before I forgot those things, and then I was further along the reading. I am cutting it very close on time, but I don't see why I wouldn't finish reading this book, because it is not, or has not been so far, a difficult book to read. The print is not small by any means, and I'm already halfway through. The real challenge is going to be to have this finished, like the reading part, have my thoughts recorded, edited, uploaded before 2023 starts, which is what I'm trying to do. But anyways, okay, so the last chapter, but it starts with a premise, then a little history, Discordianism, names and the infernal gods of chaos, the science of magic. So I thought that I was on the second chapter, but in reality, I was on the 1, 2, 3, 4, about to start the 5th chapter, which is the science of magic. I don't have much to say about the first few chapters. I did read them quite a bit ago. I did really like how she did go into the history quite a bit, because I think it's something that needs to be done. That's all I'm going to say. But like the Discordianism chapter is just like 2 pages. So it's like, I don't feel like anything was said that was like a great revelation that you couldn't gather if you already knew about chaos magic and knew the definition of the term. Then in the chapter of names and infernal gods of chaos, she speaks about the personification of deities, which is something that is done in chaos magic, or can be done in chaos magic. And then it goes into asking questions like, why is an adversary considered evil? Which would be a very chaos magician type of question to ask, by the way. Let's see. She also goes on in that chapter to talk about a plethora of different deities, gods, and goddesses, and also the way those are seen and or can be used in chaos magic. There is a excerpt that I wanted to share with you that's going to give you a better idea of the way these are seen. Okay, here it is. So it says, the choice of entities to be brought into ritual or daily life or to use none at all is down to the individual magician and may even change regularly for specific purposes. The concept of deity itself is seen as in chaos philosophy in the abstract, as something that is belief yet non-belief. It would be easy to classify this as a totally empiric and atheistic viewpoint, but that would not be entirely accurate. Austin Spare wrote about a concept which he called neither. This is in reference to something which is neither something or the other. In this case, the entities in question are seen as neither real nor not real. They exist for us, yet they do not exist. We give them existence in our belief, which is a very real existence, yet if we choose not to believe in them, they do not exist, unless perhaps another magician has chosen to believe in the particular entity, and we come into contact with it through a common experience with the other magician. Then, if there is a conflict of interest, the existence of the entity can depend on the strength of belief or non-belief of the individual magicians concerned. So, I think this right here is very important. Like she said, it's seen in Chaoist philosophy, because a lot of the stuff that she's talking about is just a lot of examples of the same thing, or arguably not the same thing at all. You gotta love chaos magic. But if you are in your heart, if you're somebody who believes in chaos magic, then you get it. Like, it's difficult to explain, because everything is valid, nothing is valid at the same time. It just reminds me how much I love this stuff. Like, it seems insane, but it's like not insane. And that's part of what this book is also like talking about. When we get into the science of magic chapter, that's why that's like a little a little recap of those previous chapters that I don't think I had ever talked about before. But when I got to the Science of Magic chapter and I read that, in the second paragraph, she talks about James, oh my God, I don't know how to say his last name. I don't know if it's Gleick or Glake. But James Gleick's Chaos Making a New Science, which is an actual science book, not a magic book. Now, as soon as I read this, I was like, hold on a minute. I think I own this book already, which is funny because, like I said, it's a science book. It's not a magic book. And I did, or I do, and it's this book right here. So it says Chaos Making a New Science. Now, I did not read this entire book cover to cover, but I did read some of it. And I also very, very ambitiously skimmed through it as soon as I got to that line in the book. Because I was like, hold on, now I gotta remember what the heck this is talking about and see if she's gonna do it justice, or if it's even relevant, or if she's just dropping the name just to say, oh, hey, here's a science book, read it, whatever. But if I was going to summarize this entire chapter, the Science of Magic, she actually does a pretty decent job of summarizing this book. Basically every chapter in this book she touches on in this, like, in one chapter. And it's not necessary. And it's funny too, because she says it at the end, like at the end of this chapter. Where is that quote of hers? It was not a quote, but at the very end of the chapter, she has these 2 pages, and the title here says how chaos science relates to magic. Because in the beginning, she's just talking about the science and trying to show you how these randomness science phenomena is not really as random as people think, which is like the whole chaos, because that's what we see. We're seeing this much of it, and it's chaotic when we see this much of it. But when we let the time pass, or as we open up our scope of what we're looking at, all of a sudden we start seeing patterns that are coming from this so-called chaos. I think that's the most general way to explain it, but there's a lot more to it, and it can get a lot more complex than that. Do you have to read the science chapter? Maybe not. If you already believe that there is a pattern within anything that is chaos, it just needs more time or to be seen differently to find that said order. But that's the way that I see it. She does, where's that part that I really did want to read? Okay, she says, I recommend reading further about chaos science without worry about how much of it you may understand. There is no test to pass, only the test of how well the insights into the chaotic workings of pattern in systems can apply to success in your own magic. And that is the golden nugget of information in that chapter. But I think she does pretty good of, like, doing, what was it, Cliff's Notes? Yeah, the Cliff's Notes version of this book. Because this book, like, she mentions equations, but I didn't really see a whole lot of equations in here. But it can get a little tedious because this book is also a summary of a bunch of scientific research that comes from different institutions and different scientists. So it's like a lot of research that happened. This James guy summarized it to prove his whole idea and theory and way of thinking when it came to chaos. And, you know, making a new science out of it. This book is not new, though. This book, I think, was written in the 80s. I'm not sure. It says copyright 1987. And the reason I actually had this book for years, and it's really funny. Okay, now I'm sidetracked, but I don't care. I'm going to go down this. So the reason I have this book, and I've had it for like many years, is because when I was first deciding, when I had decided I was going to be a STEM major, which stands for science, tech, engineering, and math, when I was deciding I was going to major in that field in, well, back then I was in community college, I wasn't sure what kind of science I wanted to do, and I was still kind of, my fallback was always going to be physics, but then I was contemplating other things, and I really liked to think of the strange and unusual things. So when I saw Chaos, the Making of a New Science, I was intrigued by it, and maybe I was prompted from elsewhere, but I can't remember at the time. And I remember when I first got this book, I bought it used. And like I said, it was an older book already. And there was like, as soon as I started reading this book, I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is cool. But what does this word mean? What does this word mean? What does this word mean? And like, I have like highlights and sticky notes. But I like what I wrote too. And then in the beginning, I have like sticky notes of like words that I didn't even know the definition of. So I think it's like cute to look back because it was an intimidating book at one time, and I was just like skimming through it and it didn't seem intimidating at all. But it did seem like it was a little much for me to need to read to just grasp the concept of what I just kind of summarized for you guys. Okay, I'm just going to read a little thing that I highlighted here. How does life begin? What is turbulence? Above all, in the universe ruled by entropy, drawing inexorably towards greater and greater disorder, how does order arise? I love that question. I love that this book kind of has like an attitude. And then this one little tiny flag here, I flagged when I was skimming through it, when I was reading the Chaonomicon, and then I jumped here, because this that I'm going to read to you made me think, okay, is James, the author of this book, is he a chaos magician? Because of what he says here. So, let's see. And he's talking about theorists versus experimenters. Because, like, let's just say I'm majoring in physics. I'm not really, I don't think, planning on pursuing this further anytime soon, but you can go into theoretical physics or you can go into experimental physics, and then you can go into a bunch of different branches. But anyways, an experimental physicist would be seen as more of an engineer because they're going to be doing the experiments, they're going to be getting their hands dirty. But a theorist is not going to really be running the experiments, but they will be the ones that are going to be theorizing and basically coming up with new hypotheses that are going to have the experimenters run specific experiments to debunk or confirm these. And they are, well, okay, I'm just gonna get to the quote, Jazmine, get to the quote. It says, theorists conduct experiments with their brains. Experimenters have to use their hands too. Theorists are thinkers. Experimenters are craftsmen. The theorist needs no accomplice. The experimenter has to muster graduate students, cajole machinists, flatter lab assistants. The theorist operates in a pristine place, free of noise, of vibration, of dirt. The experimenter develops an intimacy with matter as a sculptor does with clay, battling it, shaping it, and engaging it. The theorist invents his companions as a naive Romeo imagined his ideal Juliet. The experimenter's lovers sweat, complain, and fart. They need each other, but theorists and experimenters have allowed certain inequalities to enter their relationships since the ancient days when every scientist was both. Okay, I'm going to stop reading there because it keeps going on. But this made me think, this is so like chaos magic of him to say, because I just think about like the way that I use English sometimes. It's like, what am I even saying? But just like, I think I actually just read that quote too. Like Jack D. Hawkins says, you know, chaos magic is about the experience, getting your hands dirty and trying to actually do things to produce results. It's results driven. It's not just, you know, that whole term armchair magician. It's not about just reading a bunch of books. It's about, yeah, reading a bunch of books if you want to, but more than anything, putting it to practice and seeing what works, what doesn't, so you can basically become a better and better practitioner. And that's what this reminded me of, because it sounded like he was, you know, talking a little bit of shit, or a lot of shit, on the theorists, as opposed to the experimenters, and saying like they need to work together because we need the theorists and the experimenters. But it seems like the theorists are just like making up stuff and living these cushy lives, and they're not getting their hands dirty, and they're doing us a disservice. So I just thought I would share that. Maybe that wasn't as great as of a little nugget as I thought it was going to be. Me and my nuggets. But okay, that was my little mini summary rant, and going down a mini little rabbit hole with the Science of Magic chapter, which I knew was going to happen the moment I saw the title of the chapter, and I think I said that in another video too. But Anyways, let's see, where am I at now? Okay, so I thought this was weird. So the next chapter, Chaos, Patterns, and Mind. She talks about Carl Jung, which, you know, almost everybody talks about, but she spelled it with a K, and I thought that was weird. And I don't know why she did that. So I don't know if she did it on purpose or not, because she was very, very, like, particular about the way she spelled the word magic, because she didn't want to be associated as a follower of Alistair. So I don't know. That's a little confusing to me. I just thought that was like a fun little thing to share. I'm assuming she's gonna go into actually like working with chaos magic, and that's probably when I'm going to have a lot more to say. But now I'm gonna be quiet because I think I already talked enough. But yeah, wish me luck. I shall be done soon. Okay, so I did it. I finished reading the Chaonomicon, including the appendix, by the way, which is like an additional, I think, 50 pages. There were a lot of notes taken, highlights, and all kinds of cool stuff. I think the last time I left off with you guys, I was shy of like 100 pages. I'm just going to go through and share a couple of the things that I've highlighted. I also tried to not share too much because I'm not trying to rip off any of the authors of the books that I'm reviewing in any way by sharing too much information. I give you snippets of parts that are in sections of chapters. So I hope that, you know, I'm giving enough to like show you something you might be interested in order to help you decide whether you're going to purchase the book or not, but not too much to where you don't feel like you need to purchase the book, even though it's a subject matter that you're interested in. Without further ado, here we go. Now there's some things that I highlighted just because I want them for me, and there's some things that I think are just generally good. What I did find in this book is that I saw a lot of advice that I personally think is good advice in general, like regardless of whether you are a practicing chaos magician or any type of magician or witch or practitioner or spiritual person. A lot of it's good advice. She really tries to tell the reader to think for themselves. Like, it's a huge message, like think for yourself. And there's a quote in the back. Well, yeah, there's not in the back, but like towards the end that I just was like chef's kiss, because it really shows you how much she's trying to push people to be thinking for themselves. And she really likes Austin Osman Spare also, and if you know who he is, then that makes sense when you listen to me. Listen to what I just said about her. Oh my goodness. So earlier I spoke about the science and magic chapter and the type of science that she is referring to. And she continues with that theme, not so much as in constantly referring to the hard science, but mentioning it here and there and how it relates. But her overall message comes around not only to create things for yourself, but also to know yourself and know your magic and find the patterns in your magic. So the patterns that pertain to you. And then this is another good one. All ritual methods are valid because they are nothing but symbols, tools to focus the attention of the magician onto that which is required to change or manifest. So that is like the way that she sees it. And I really liked this way of looking at it because this is very chaos magician, which goes back to something I mentioned before when I talked about the whole, was it the neither, I think it was, which is like, nothing is true, all is true, pretty much. Or, yeah. Let's see. Okay, this is another good one. Chaos magic is not in itself a system or philosophy. It is rather an attitude that one applies to one's magic and philosophy. I like the way that she talks about these things because she makes me feel like I need to rethink how I'm thinking about my magic. And that is something that I love. I like it when anybody does that for me, which is why I like reading so much and so many different types of magical books, because I like it when I have to retest myself on what I'm really believing and why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I think these methods work if they're producing results. I wouldn't say that she gives exercises in the way that she's going to say how to do this, step 1, step 2, step 3. She goes through methods that she's learned, that she's heard of, and she gives you like a good summary so that you can pick it up and start, but you still kind of have to fill in a lot of the detail. And I like that because it's kind of like her telling you, you cannot just copy this. Like, try to do some work. Her voice in this book is like, do the work. Do the work. Stop trying to copy people. You need experience. Take your time. Learn magic and learn different types of magic, but don't go crazy just because you're trying to be unique and waste time in half dipping into things. And that is very much the attitude that I get throughout the entirety of this book, to be honest. She does go over a lot of things, like I said, philosophy-wise, that I kind of already agree with or that I've heard quite a bit. But then every now and then she'll like hit me with something that I'm like, wait, what is that? And I think that's just a testament to her experience with magic in general, because she has been practicing for decades at this point. Okay, so she says, the most talented magicians I have met have always delighted in pleasures. Magic comes easily to those who work within the physical laws of nature, and nature loves pleasure. It is, in fact, the driving force to survival. Those who seek to transcend the physical deny nature and cause an unhealthy rift between mind and body, and therefore also damaging spirit. And I love... And like, I love the idea that everything is important. Like, it's not just your mind. It's not just your spirit, your intuition. It's not just your body. It is everything together. And denying any one of those things is going to leave you wanting more always. And then she goes on to share a quote by Jan Fries. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically says, where we divide body and consciousness, we are violating both. Flesh is our medium of interaction with the world. And I think that perfectly explains why I feel the way that I do. My God, I hope I'm not coming. Oh, whatever. Shut up, Jazmine. Okay, so the reason this also resonates hardcore with me is because when you do heavy workings or cleansing rites, rituals, whatever you may call it, that requires quite a bit of your energy, whether you think it's only spiritual or physical, it will, or it can, leave you burnt out. And it says right here, the wise magician will get plenty of sleep, eat well, and generally behave as if recovering from a bad cold, at least for a couple of days after a major working. And I think this is so important. You have to take care of yourself. If you're not doing it like as a job, because, you know, like there's people that do it as a job, but if you're not doing it as a job, then, you know, if you just do like one working a week or a month, then maybe it's not that much of a big deal. But when you finish doing something like pretty hefty, either for yourself or somebody else, and then you also have to help somebody else the next day, you need to take care of yourself, or you will completely feel like crap and not be able to do things properly without feeling horrible. So I think aftercare is very, very key, and she points to that, and I loved that. Okay, I think I'm going to share a few more things, and then I'm going to shut up because I'm going to run out of room on my phone. Okay, so right here she's talking about focus, and she says, the rule in chaos magic is that all methods are valid so long as they work. If traditional methods didn't work, they would not have survived for so long. And I loved that, because she is not saying you have to leave all tradition behind. She's saying they survived because they worked, so let's keep working them, but what else can we do to make it so it's that much more powerful for you, for your purpose, for that time? And then she says the answer lies in learning the traditions and methods well, and then looking at all the rituals as free form. And this goes back to what I was just, literally what I just said. And that resonates with me hardcore, y'all. Okay, here's another great one. A real free thinker, however, is not locked into ideas read in books. Books are educational and can open windows to the ideas of those who have written them, but they do not teach a person to think independently, even in those rare cases where they encourage the reader to do so. So this is one of my favorite like pages, because she says that, and she's so right. And then she goes on and says this, in that respect, this book is no different. Like, she's like, please keep that in mind. Even this book, like, I'm not trying to tell you that. And I love this because it kind of shows her humility, but also her power, and the power she is trying to have us know that we possess, and to use it and to harness it. So it's a very powerful book. Yeah, I think that was the last of like the actual book part, and then the rest is the appendix. And she starts with 2 articles, I think, that she wrote herself. Then she goes into a couple of, or more like 5 or 6 pages. No, that's more than like 5 pages of Austin Spare. And then she goes into computer iterations to generate fractals and shows you how they're generated. So it's just a little more math and sciencey, but it's nothing hard to like understand if you read it. Then she talks in like 3 pages about servitors, nothing crazy there. And then dance and movement in magic. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this book. I have highlighted a lot of things that either made me think differently about something I thought I was very steadfast on, or things that really resonated with me with my philosophy as it stands already in regards to magic. Also some some methods that I think I want to try to play with in what I already do. This is a great book. I don't think you have to be a chaos magician to read this book by any means, but if you are interested in chaos magic, my number 1 recommendation to get started on that is going to be, let me see if I can get it. It's going to be Condensed Chaos by Phil Hine. And yeah, obviously I'm like one of these people that just have their books looking like this after they read them, because that's just what I do. But lots of good information in here. Even just reading the first chapter is good enough for you to then go and read this one and really appreciate what's going on. But this one I think is like a must-have if you want to understand chaos magic at a pretty good level. But anyways, I think I've talked enough. It has been a crazy wild ride being able to read all of these books in the short amount of time, but I feel so much more magical and ready to tackle my magic in different ways. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So I hope everybody has great New Year's activities. I'm trying to get this uploaded before 2023 so I can say I finished it all before the year was over. But yeah, see you guys next year.